Welcome to another episode of the 1946 podcast. This is season 1
the Culture Shift Tour.
with your host, Brent Roberts.
And I am Sharon Rocky Roggio.
And on this episode, we are getting the heck out of Oklahoma.
We love Oklahoma,
And-
but
On our way to Texas, we were anticipating a smooth drive. It's such a short drive from Oklahoma City to Frisco, Texas.
I mean, that was our shortest drive on the trip, 3.5 hours.
We're going to
and
get
our
there,
hosts
relax.
have a great house, a pool.
Let's get in the pool.
We were ready to go.
The freeway had other plans in store for us.
So did the RV.
So we're driving. Carter is behind the wheel, and we just start seeing the boom, and then the shake and shimmy. And as soon as I heard that pop, I'm like, "Uh-oh!"
I know that sound.
And so I'm like, "Don't brake! Don't hit the brakes!" Because it was a blowout. If you like brake hard, it can toggle the vehicle and potentially flip. Maybe not our big behemoth, but so we just rolled to a slow stop, and sure enough, we had a blowout on the side of the freeway.
It was
And
a rip out.
We were looking essentially at the Texas sign like a mile or two ahead, just waving, almost getting there. And luckily, we had AAA.
Oh, gosh. I
So
forgot about that.
we just called AAA, and it got resolved.
Never.
6 phone calls later, 3 hours later, on the side of the road with multiple phone calls into AAA, which is Roadside Assistance Insurance. And no one came to our rescue.
I actually need to write them a letter. I forgot about that.
Write them all.
I think they definitely need a letter.
I'm going to speak with a manager. It was a rough experience. And
Yeah.
while we're sitting there in the middle of the heat, the asphalt just cooking us from under, the sun from above, I got to go pee on a fence.
I may have started that trend. It was like, yeah.
I made sure it wasn't electric. But the generator went out for our AC in the back of the RV as well.
It's not your fault.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to figure out what I can do to help and be of assistance, and I just,
Uh-oh.
even if I drove out there to get you guys, it probably, like, somebody's got to be there to drive the vehicle. And
Exactly. I think that
so
generator just
sorry.
stopped, or maybe it didn't. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
So we're sitting there
Oh.
cooking, like we were just getting cooked like human beings, get ready for fine dining. And out of the blue, this random character whips around in a car, and we're like, "Oh boy, what's this? What's happening?" And they start walking back to us. I could see through the window. There's a big dog in this person's car.
And this guy is tatted up, earrings,
Face tattoos.
big dude. Yeah, banging on the window.
Now,
And he
hey,
says,
I know this movie. 1946. I've heard about this. You guys
"Did you do this movie?"
Did you do this film? And so it's like a fan.
This is so great. This is really fun for me. I'm sorry you guys are broken down this. This is great. I tell you. Cool. Yeah, I'm a huge Bible nerd, man. I like Bart Ehrman and Pete Enns and Amy Joel Levine, and I mean, name somebody. I know him. I love it.
Dan McClellan.
He's wonderful.
Thank you. Can I hug you?
Yes.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank
What's
you.
your name again? Sorry.
I'm Rocky. I'm the director of the movie.
Rocky. Cool. It's really good to meet you. Sweet.
He was just driving by like 70, cranked his brakes, and saw us broken down. And he took 3 of our team members up to the nearest tire store.
You got a flat tire. Yeah, we had a blowout of 2 tires.
Lame. Helped us load in the new tires, brought them back. That tire store, not AAA, came and put that tire on for us. And he was like a roadside hero because he knew the film. He was just like,
I mean, not only did he know the film, he was like a bit of a Bible nerd. Yes, he was like, he knows Dan McClellan. He knows all the people on the TikTok that do the deconstruction. He was a Jewish man. He went to synagogue a couple days later. I sent him a screener of the film, and he showed some of his friends. Yeah, he's just
what a guy.
tickle pink. Yeah.
Yeah. Jesse, wherever you are, rescuing your next roadside person in need, thank you for the hero that you were to us.
Thank you.
And then we were on our way into Frisco.
Late, very late. And we
Yeah.
we had a dinner that night planned too with the Mama Bears. So Frisco, Texas is home of Liz Dyer, who was our community leader. And Liz Dyer founded and started the Mama Bears organization, which is a Facebook group organization dedicated to providing information for moms, but then also providing a safe haven and making sure to stick up for the Cubs, all the LGBTQ kids out there, and pushing back on things like Moms for Liberty and all the legislation that is going around in the schools and things like that. And so there was a group of 30 Mama Bears
waiting to dine with us.
Waiting to meet with us, to dine with us. And a lot of them, of course, I've known over the years. And of course, they've helped sponsor the event to get the word out. And it got whittled down to 12, 10. By the time we got there, it was 6.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful to dine with them.
Yeah.
And we were exhausted.
Yep.
It was a very tiring dinner, but it was still wonderful to know that people show up like that for us.
Yeah. There was a beautiful sign in the yard from our host family. Welcome us. Welcome 1946. It was just adorable. Just like, I think you said, or Paul said, someone used the word hospitality throughout this entire trip was just what we were met with every step of the way that we went. And Frisco, for sure, offered that to us.
Well, and we picked Frisco because Frisco banned the most books out of any county in the United States in 2023. And so what city do we go to in Texas? We obviously have a big community of people in Dallas. We know people in Austin. We know people all over Texas, actually. But not really, I guess with the Mama Bears, we know in Frisco, but we've never been to Frisco. And we don't have resources there, really. So it would have been a lot easier if we picked a town where we knew 50 people and they can help house us and feed us and find a location and things like that. No, we didn't really have a lot of help. And we actually were told that there's no safe space in Frisco and we were going to have a really hard time finding it. And quite the opposite, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The church that we went to had a queer person on staff, and they actually hosted our movie twice before with pastors in the community. So all these different things that we didn't even know about, but you hear all the negative stuff that's going on in Frisco, but there are people working in these communities for LGBTQ rights and women's rights and voter rights and reproductive rights.
Thank you, Grace Avenue Methodist and Pastor Laura, Pastor Billy, there on staff, who had a great interview with.
Oh, Bailey. Bailey was the one that we met with as well. Mm-hmm.
And they have a child in the LGBTQ community, and it's a huge reason they made the shift to become affirming and have a church like this that could host a group like us. We had a great time there. Again, Grace Avenue Methodist hosted a great event for us. I had a buddy from LA that I was in a small group with meet us there, Colin. It was so cool for so many of us to have friends that popped in to come screen the film and watch us do our event. I got to interview Phil with the Collective Voice podcast.
Oh, right. I'm going to actually be on Phil's podcast soon. So that episode will be coming out probably around the same time this is all out.
You better tune into that as well. Just a lot of great time with people at the church, and Liz got to do a presentation.
Liz was our community leader.
Yep, and she laid it down.
She did.
She laid it down in that one.
Did. Liz, we love you.
What's happening in our country?
And tonight there's somebody from the community we want you to meet. We're going to let her come up and say a word to you. She's actually the founder of a group called Mama Bears. Some of y'all have heard of Mama Bears. Yeah. Started back in 2014. It was a Facebook group that was designed just to support moms who had LGBTQ plus children. And before long, it just started growing and expanding. And today, there are over 40,000 members of that Facebook group, of that organization. And so Mama Bears now has grown into this larger organization called Real Mama Bears. And there's 60 chapters across the United States and 2 or 3 other countries. And it's just amazing the work that they're going to do. So we want to hear from somebody tonight who actually lives in Keller, Texas, not far from here. Would you welcome the founder of Mama Bears, Liz Dyer?
Thank you. Love you. I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm happy to see so many of you here tonight. This film, 1946, that you're going to see tonight, and the work and the research that Kathy Baldock and Ed Oxford did that is highlighted in the film is very, very, very important. I come from a conservative Christian background, so I know firsthand how the Bible, how Scripture has been misinterpreted, misunderstood against the LGBTQ plus community. I know how it's been used against them and weaponized against them. And so I'm just excited that Rocky and her team have decided at this moment in time to take this film on the road. And I love their goal to educate, to inform, to inspire, to motivate people to get involved. There's three things that I think about when I think about the potential of 1946. I think it has the potential to change hearts and minds. I know not everyone who sees it is going to have a change of heart, who's going to change their beliefs, but we can't discount anyone. We never know what's going on in somebody's life. Some people are naturally open-minded, and they can take in new information and engage with it and think about it in an honest way. Some people may have something going on in their lives that makes them second-guess what they've always been taught, what they've always believed. When my own son came out as gay, I wasn't affirming at that time. But although I knew what I'd always been taught, I also knew my son. And I knew things didn't quite fit together. So I did my own research, and I changed my mind. At the time, I was leading women's ministry in a Southern Baptist church, so it was a big step for me. But it happened, and it can happen with anybody. But not only can this film change hearts and minds, but this film can also heal people. As I said, Scripture has been used against the LGBTQ community. It's been weaponized against them. People have had their human dignity stripped from them. They've been told they're not good enough, that they're broken, and if they can't fix that thing inside of them, that they're unwanted, unloved, disgusted, immoral, and gross. But this film reminds them, or maybe tells some of them for the first time, that those things aren't true, that they are good, that they are worthy of love, that they can live wholeheartedly with pride as their true, authentic self. But that's not all. Not only can this film change hearts and minds and heal people and restore people's dignity, but I believe it can also change the world. Because when people see this film, it ruminates with them. They think about it, they talk about it. And that has ripple effects. It can change the way a teacher interacts with a trans student in their classroom. It can change the way a pastor speaks from the pulpit on Sunday morning. It can change the way a parent responds when their child comes out to them.
But back at home in Frisco was really where I felt the most hospitality and some of the most powerful conversations with our hosts, Shannon and Fred, who used to be conservative, very conservative, and red.
Like Fred, I don't think has ever really, well, they've definitely never hosted LGBTQ people
Right.
before, but I don't know if Fred's really interacted the way that he has with queer people before. So now he can actually say he knows queer people and has queer friends or LGBTQ friends. I know everybody identifies differently. I just use an umbrella term. I'm Gen X, so Gen Xers, I think, are comfortable with that word. But I'm really proud of them, and that's what this whole thing is about. It's about until you're in relationship with people, it's really hard to, I feel you shouldn't really speak on a matter. You don't really have all the pieces.
Yeah.
Say it better than me.
I mean,
But you know what I'm trying to say.
you need to have LGBTQ people stay at your house, is what we're saying. Let us.
LGBTQ sleepovers are no.
We
Not like that.
truly, they open their doors to us and let us crash in their home. Like someone's home is their sanctuary and a safe space where so many things happen with your family. You get such great news there. You go through your deepest, darkest moments in your home, and they let us in that space for us to sleep, for us to rest, unpack, and just be ourselves, which they made us feel so comfortable. And so again, thank you, Shannon and Fred, and thank you for, it was her journey through COVID, which so many people we met along the way talked about this time frame through COVID where they were able to stop and pause, shut down the noise, because there was nothing constantly feeding. We all took a break, and they're like, wait a minute, what is my life? What is my belief system? How do I feel about this stuff? And that's where Shannon in particular was like, I don't think this is right. And it was one little thing that got pulled out, and then it all came crumbling down. And she talked a lot about that in her interview. Let's just tune in to what Shannon and Fred had to say.
My name is Shannon Hammond. My family and I live in Frisco, Texas, which is about 20 minutes north of Dallas. We've lived here for 30 years. We're in our mid-50s now. My husband and I are empty nesters. And so when we moved here, I would say, the way I would describe myself would be evangelical, conservative, Republican, born and raised Southern Baptist. So we just followed the script of everything church told us, everything the party lines told us of Republican. We didn't question at all. So I've come a long way since then. In 2020, we had time to be quiet and be still and think. And I did that, watching my church friends, evangelical friends, and their love and enthusiasm for former President Trump. I was raised in a way that taught me that Jesus was everything that was kind of the opposite of what he did. So I kind of had a crisis with that, coupled with the fact that at about that time, I began listening more and more to my friends that were gay. At this exact same time, all these things were going on. And I finally came to the conclusion that I believe my gay friends when they say, I've always been this way. I was born this way. I listened to a podcast called Blue Babies Pink by B.T. Harmon, and it was just his journey, like many of my friends, of praying and praying to God that they would not be gay. Gay followers of Christ, just pleading with Jesus, doing all of the formulas that we knew, and they were never free of that. So one day I told myself, I said, you know what? Something isn't right. God wouldn't make people this way and then call them sin. Something's not adding up. And as my girlfriend Dina says, we pulled a thread and everything unraveled. I really embraced COVID and our kind of disconnection from the world to allow myself to investigate all of these things. And as everything unwound, I looked into what in my faith and my theology is truly Jesus, and what is just extra stuff that the church just taught us. What I've lost are these tight boundaries about who Jesus is or who God was and who God is. And what I've gained, I think of what I've gained so much is the reality that God is so much bigger and so much more loving than I was ever taught. And I believe that's really who God is. And I can't explain it, but I feel free. I feel more connected to God. I feel more like a follower of Christ the more I learn and grow. And I have not landed on the answers to everything. This is still a process. And it's a process that I am embracing. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to listen to your heart, even though we're told, as scripture says, the heart is desperately wicked above all things, who can know it? That doesn't mean not to listen to your intuition and your gut that God placed in us as human beings. I believe that's here for a reason, and to wrestle with and to ask. And when we look into these things and we begin to think for ourselves, I just feel like we come into our own. And for me personally, I've gotten to know God on such a deeper level, and I feel like I'm truly a Christ follower now. And one of my dearest friends gives me tons of quotes to put all around my house. And something that just resonates now, and I don't remember who said it, I think it's Rumi. Barns burnt down, now I can see the moon. And that's how I feel about my life.
My name is Fred Hammond. I'm married to Shannon for 35 years. We are empty nesters.
How's that been?
I like it. I love it. I don't like it. I love it. Well, one of the reasons we kept the home is so we could do this. We love having the ability to share our nest with other people at other times, because otherwise this house there's no purpose for it. Frisco, Texas is a wonderful place that we've lived for years, and it's been great to our family. I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school, and met Shannon, my wife, at college. And when I met her, she had this joy that I would say joy, it was more of a personal relationship with Jesus that the Catholic Church didn't offer me. It was more ritualistic and formal and very great people, but there wasn't any connection. And when I saw Shannon, I saw a different relationship with Jesus than I'd ever seen before. And so I went down that journey with her and our family, and we did that for a number of years. And I love the Jesus part. I didn't really find that personal relationship with the denomination part, though. Most of the heartbreak I went through as an adult and was through the church, and a lot of the letdown that I had was through the church. And in fact, I felt like it was safer to be neutral than to invest in the church because of the hurt that I'd experienced. And that's not everyone. There were certainly some good moments in it, but categorically at some of the most critical times in my life, I was abandoned and left to my own device when I found in other faiths that I didn't subscribe to were actually more vested in my well-being than my own, which was hurtful and disappointing and not permissible. When I lost my job the very first time, which I'd been an achiever my whole life and always tried to provide and protect for my family, and I needed a job. This was the first time that I'd ever been faced with no money, no income. Shannon stayed at home. And I reached out to the church, and they said, "We'll pray for your brother." And I said, "Thank you. Do you know anyone that I could get a job with? Thank you. Could you help me write a resume? Thank you. Could you do anything to help me?" And there were a lot of false promises that never came true. And at about the same time, a Mormon neighbor of ours invited me to a career fair, a resume writing event, a networking event. And I said, I cannot believe my faith cannot treat me the way their faith can. And that just didn't work for me. And it was impermissible. Again, once again, I don't want to invest in things or put my heart out into things that continually let me down. Don't buy into it. I mean, don't buy into the religious message that puts a lot of shame on you, a lot of guilt on you. Every Sunday you come home scared. And so as far as for me in my house, and Shannon, I know believes this, is just going to be loving. And I'm not going to exclude anyone. And I'm not going to judge anyone. And I'm not going to try to be better than anyone. I'm just going to be part of everyone and love everyone and help everyone in hopes that we can all get along, because in life today, it's just not present. Just focus in on really being loving and communal and see what you can do with all races, all religions, all sexes, all nationalities, because that's really how the world's going to change in a way that's significant, meaningful, and real. I'm certainly extraordinarily proud of you and your team and everyone involved in this, and your courage to be loving and to come in our home and just be part of us. I love it that you're here, and you're always welcome back. Yeah, fist pump. Boom. All right.
And like you just said a minute ago, Rocky, there's so many things until I don't feel like I'm well-versed enough to speak on so many topics and so many things. And there was another person who they're close friends with in Texas who came in and told us her very intimate story about having a trans child, and particularly living in Texas. Texas has put forth 20%, just as that state alone, of those 500 plus anti-LGBTQ bills that hit the floor in 2023. And so many of those have to do with gender affirming care, specifically for children and education. And so this mom shared about having to travel to San Diego to meet with doctors and find the right care and specialty consultations and everything she needs and wants for her family to feel safe. And this kind of giant witch hunt that Governor Abbott put out in a letter to people in the public and officials to say, if you hear about this happening with trans children, then make sure to report them to the state. So it becomes this fear-based witch hunt almost for people to feel so very uncomfortable and not even safe to go to a pride parade for threat or fear of being outed and ousted to be illegal, to be deemed by the state something inappropriate. It's just a wild time in Texas, and she shares it so beautifully in her interview as well.
I live in Frisco, Texas, and I've lived here for 25 years. I watched the 1946 documentary really to educate myself on some beliefs that I had held for many, many years and been told. Because there's always been questions. My kids ask me questions all the time. Um, Mom, where does it say, in the Bible, that being gay is a sin? The documentary was fascinating and very eye-opening and really kind of confirmed what I'd already believed deep inside anyway, is that it wasn't. The message matters to me significantly because I live in Texas and I'm the mother of a transgender daughter. I'm on this journey right now. I'm still on it. It started from the moment my child was born, and I thought I was blessed with another boy. So I was a mom of two boys. And as years went on, I realized that I didn't have a boy. And my child was very vocal about this. And so for many years, the first, I'd say 10 years of her life was leading a double life, portraying to be a boy in public and then being her true self, which was a girl. Being in Texas and experiencing this has not been easy. So I'm still in the middle of it. I feel like I'm in a war right now. I'm gonna get really emotional. I'm gonna try not to. She's been given a supernatural strength, and I say it's God-given. There's no way I would ever have the kind of strength that this child has displayed to be able to be true to herself in this climate. And the most beautiful part of her coming out is loving her for who she is and showing unconditional love and treating her with love and acceptance the way I know that God sees her and loves her. She's beautifully made. When she's socially transitioned, I've never seen her happier. And it was the joy in her eyes and the peace that it gave me, just confirmation that she was living her true self. Supporting my child in her journey and being transgender has been extremely difficult with the church. When I first met my husband, he was attending a Bible study, and the leader of that study, it was out of his house, and he had a framed saying behind him that said, "Jesus, protect me from your followers." And I had no idea what that meant. And I remember it perplexed me. And I thought about it, never understood it. And I can say today I understand it better than I ever want to understand that. We have been alienated, judged, shut out by so many people that were in our church community, with the exception of just a few. And Jesus came to this earth, and that was his message, was love and acceptance, and that's what he taught us. And so as his followers, you would hope that everybody would show that, and especially the church community. What I would say to other Christian families that don't understand gender identity or the spectrum is, please educate yourself, listen to the stories. If you want to put it plain and simple, be open-minded. Know that we're people too. I'm a former hardcore conservative. I mean, I was big time. So I know what it's like. I mean, I've been on both sides. Don't think of things as in a box, because God doesn't put people in a box. I've also had to protect my daughter from the church, but at home, we can talk about our faith and talk about God and talk about, all of those things despite what the church is telling her. And that's been a huge, huge challenge. So it's been a lot of educating her on who she is and who God says she is versus what the world and religion says about her. And I worry about her rights, which have already been stripped in this state. She cannot receive health care. There was an attempt to criminalize me as a parent for seeking health care for her. For her to receive health care, we would have to go out of state. My fear is if the Project 2025 comes out, that it won't just be Texas, that it'll be the entire country. So as an American, we have seriously thought about, can we even stay in this country anymore? And that is devastating to me. Literally exile from our own country. My faith stays strong. And hope that people like you and the home that we sit in will make a difference. My daughter is very happy, and she doesn't necessarily tell me things, but I can see by just her demeanor that she's happy and she's loved. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what matters, being a mom.
So this whole experience has been a giant learning curve for me to hear, understand, and learn things that I didn't know. And like we know, get to know a lesbian, get to know a gay guy, sit with him, talk with him about their experience. And I don't know fully how to talk about non-binary issues. I don't know how to talk about transgender issues. And that's why we have beautiful people on our team to be able to share these things. And we have them here today. Carter Nunez, would you come on down?
It's so good to see you. How have you been since our adventure?
I've been doing very good, doing my best to stay busy and creative and motivated and all the fun things.
Remind the folks at home what your artist name is and where to find that and what that is.
So my artist name is Transcendence, and it is a play on my identity as well as my spirituality. And you can find it at the handle Transcendence. It has numbers in it, so it's TR4, N5, C3, ND, 3NC, 3.
We're going to put that in the comments below.
It'll be in the show notes for sure.
In the description, so they can find you. What launched you into music like that?
So I've been wanting to pursue music my whole life, and it was something that I didn't think that I would get to do, either just because of like how the music industry is or how labels are, or if that's something that would even happen for me. So I actually started off as an actor, and so I also do acting. And then when 2020 happened and everyone was kind of forced, whether they'd like to or not, to sit inside and sit with themselves, I kind of just sat with myself and thought, like, why am I here? What is my purpose? I used a lot of time to pray and meditate, and God was just like, like music is a big thing for you. You used it to communicate, you've used it to understand. And growing up with a speech impediment, like I had like a stutter. I can't always speak, so sometimes I have nonverbal episodes. And music has been that way where I can speak, and really fast for that matter. And I decided to go ahead and just take the leap and say, like, why not? Like, life is so short. And I think that's something a lot of us learned during quarantine. And I decided, why not? So I just started independently, and I run my own label, and I picked up mixing and music production. So I make like a lot of my own music, but I'm also open to collaboration because I have a lot to learn, and I write all of my own lyrics. And another thing that I like to tell people is, as a kid, like, I prayed to speak in tongues and I didn't know what that was for me. And I think, funnily enough, that ended up being a spiritual lyricist and rapper. So that's kind of how it came to be.
So talented, so multifaceted, and our driver as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, yeah, actually, so how do you want to let everybody know how you got to be the driver of the 1946 road tour? I mean, obviously we helped drive as well, but we need someone to do a lot of it, or like when we have a lot of office work to do, but we definitely helped out. But yes, please.
Yeah. So Rocky and I have mutual friends, and one of them, shout out Nikki Cutler, and he posted in the Act Now group chat, which is also an acting community founded by Rain Valdez. So also shout out Rain.
What's up, Rain? What's up, Nikki?
And
we're gonna say a shout out to our friend Chris too, who is roommates with Nikki, and that's actually how I've met. Well, I haven't even met Nikki, but communicated with Nikki because we're working to show 1946 with the trans community in LA.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool.
So Chris talked to Nikki, and
and
sure enough, they put like this post out there for like a driver, and I've driven for like other productions before, and just in general. So I was actually just talking with a friend a couple of weeks prior about 1946, and sure enough, there's this notification right now, driver for hire, and I was just like, this is very much aligned. This is very much like the universe and God putting it like in front of me. And without hesitation, I responded. I was the first one to respond to the call immediately. And he was like, okay, cool. I'll get in touch with Rocky, who was touring at the time.
in Singapore.
Yes. And it was a couple weeks later, we took like a Zoom call. We talked for about an hour and a half. And then by the end of it, you're like, I'm cool. I'm down if you are, and if you want to jump in this RV. And I was like, I would love nothing more
Nice.
than to do that. Yeah. And fun fact for everybody, I have never driven an RV before, ever. First time.
We learned that right outside of Temecula.
Oh, we learned that right outside of Jenna's house.
But we've already bragged on your incredible parking skills, how you whipped that thing into that parking space.
It
We're
was
like,
like bold.
What?
Carter is
Oh, yeah.
bold. Carter is not afraid. Carter might be the quieter one on the team, maybe. But you speak with purpose, which we appreciate.
Yeah.
And so when Carter speaks, we know it's with purpose.
The map behind us. So we're talking about Houston currently, but for your experience, any highlights, places that were your favorite along the way, some fun memories?
Well, I would have to say definitely Frisco. Shannon and Fred were lovely hosts. And I would also say, because like I know so many people across the country, I got to spend my birthday with my brother in Phoenix, which is fun. And then I have a couple of friends in Dallas where we happened to check the RV, make sure it was up and running good. And then another friend in Colorado Springs, and then my cousin in Vegas. So I was like, out of all the places, I think it's also, who we met along the way too. So new faces, familiar faces. And then tourist wise, also shout out Liz, who isn't here right now, but she and I got to just hang out in Birmingham while we were there and do like all the fun sightseeing and stuff, and that was also really fun.
We finally had a day off. Birmingham was one of our first days to just like, what? We had a day to explore?
You actually knew the most people. Honestly, every time we're like, he knows everybody. That was someone like,
Yeah.
I want to talk about you and I decided to go get some sushi in Houston from our Airbnb. And thank you, Ray, for our Airbnb stay in
Thank you, Ray.
Houston. We were getting in and we're like, let's go get some sushi. And so we jumped in an Uber, and we had to Uber a lot of places because all we had was this giant RV to get around, and we're not lugging that thing everywhere.
Correct.
And with 6 of us, we typically liked to stay together in the same place, but sometimes we just simply couldn't because of logistics. So you, me, and Paul were in one Airbnb, and then y'all were with
My cousin. Yeah.
I think.
Mariana.
And so we went to go get some sushi, and these various places we had to take Uber drives. One of the questions always like, y'all visiting? And it's like, yep. What are y'all doing in town? Well, we're here sharing a documentary film. Oh, what's the film about? And it's always just like, okay, how's this about to go? How do we want to answer this? Because you just never know what direction it's gonna go, and especially based on what some of the music's playing in some of those Ubers and Lyfts when you get in. And it was very Christian in a lot. Christian Uber, I think we booked, but this one particular ride, this this guy's number one had his music blaring when we got in. That is like, oh, the bass was booming when we got in the Uber, and we're like, is he gonna turn it down?
I couldn't hear Brett, and Brett was next to me.
Yeah. So I'm like, hey, do you mind turning that down to smidge? He's like, all right. And then he gets to the question, and so I answered, and he and I start out, and he immediately comes back with, well, I don't know, you know, God's love and stuff like that, but I still think being gay is a sin, and for some reason, I just was not in the mood. I was not having it. I was hungry or something, but I'm just like, no, I don't receive that. I don't believe that me being who I am has anything to do with sin, and I'm not going to be called a sinner because I'm gay. And that's how we started our ride. So I started it off with a great tone or the conversation. But I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, I am kind of tired of being labeled a sinner or sinful just because I express who I am and who I choose to love, my sexual orientation and who I'm attracted to. So it's okay if I want to get upset or angry about that. But normally I for some reason, I was just ready to fire back. But then we dialed it down. We got back to a better conversation. And then he asks about you.
Yeah.
Tell us how that went.
So that was interesting because that was the first time that's ever happened to me. Brent had briefly stepped out of the car to go
Get the sushi.
Our sushi.
Yeah.
So I was left alone. And so he was like, okay, cool. Well, if he's gay, then are you two lovers? And I was like, we are not lovers.
The day ain't over.
Oh, I didn't
Just
hear this
kidding.
part of the story.
Yeah. So while Brent was in there, he like turned the conversation to me. And I'm usually like, they said, like the quiet one of the group. So I was just hoping I could just look out the window. And then he's like, okay, well, are you queer? And I was like, yeah, I am. And he's like, okay, cool. Like, are you gay too? And I was like, no, I'm not. And he's like, oh, okay, well, you know, what are you? And so I decided to lead with the A. And for those of you who don't know, it's for asexual. So I am ace. And so he was like, okay, well, what does that mean? And I'm used to that as well. So I'm like, okay, I'll take this as like an educated moment. And so I'm like, well, I'm not like sexually like attracted to someone just based off of appearance and stuff. And so I like the person for who they are. But at the end of the day, the whole like drive doesn't really motivate me. I just like people for who they are. And he's like, okay, well then let me ask you this. Like who do you like? And I was like, I like women. And he was like, so puzzled. And he was like, okay. So, but you just said you were LGBT. And I was like, I am. And he's like, okay. So then Brent comes back into the car. And I will say this is where I felt like a bit like, well, not a bit, like you provide a lot of safety, as a safe person, hold a safe space. And so I was like, okay, I also just don't want to be small or quiet about this.
Right.
And I've gotten this far, so I might as well say something. And so I was like, oh, well, I'm also the T in LGBT. And so he still doesn't know what that is. So I'm like, okay, I was like, I'm trans. This guy does a double take and like looks back in the mirror and then looks back at me and looks back, then looks over at Brent for confirmation.
That's correct, sir.
He's just like, wait, you used to be a woman? And I was like, no. And so, I mean, that was me having a little poking fun in it because I know he is very like black and white thinking. So it's like, he's already puzzled about the ace thing. So he's thrown out the window. I'm like, no. I was like, I was socialized as a woman. I was raised, to like present female. I was like, but I am a trans man. And he was like, okay, let me get this. And this is the part where basically I'm going to say, like, if you know a trans person, which you probably do, whether they disclose it or not, there's a lot of questions that you don't ask. And he decided that that was going to be the first and only question he would ask, which is, what do you have? As in, what's in your pants? And I refused to answer. So I was like, okay, sir, well, gender is different from sex, which is different from gender expression, which is different from sexual orientation. And so he was like, okay, well, what were you born with? And I was like, I'm not going to disclose that to you. but you have to know that there's like these differences and what they are. I'm like, but like regardless, that doesn't change my identity as a man. And then he proceeded to reword the question because he still wanted that answer and I was refusing to give it to him. And then he's like, okay, well, like, do you have this or do you have this? And I still refuse to answer. So then Brett intervenes and it's like, well, I have a friend. I don't know if you want to share that bit about your friend or just how they came out to you after you came out. And like, oh, by the way.
Yeah. Meeting, the reason why we have an alphabet is essentially because you get to know every story. Your story is not my story. And my story is not your story.
I am so glad I'm not a gay man.
We are too. That we all have to make space to listen to one another. And what is it? The vast differences between lesbian, gay, and bi, and trans, and non-binary, and asexual, and even intersex. And I don't think I'd ever met someone who was intersex to be able to have space, to have a conversation, and listen to that experience other than like TED Talks or YouTube.
And the documentary Everybody, starring, well, there's a whole bunch of people in there, but River Gallo is in there.
Mm-hmm. So it's having resources like that to listen and learn and hear these stories. But I randomly got a phone call from someone from Bible college in Joplin, Missouri that I used to worship with and talk with. And she was calling and started the conversation kind of just about going through a divorce. And I was prepared to be like, oh boy, here we go. I think this person's about to equate their divorce with my sinfulness and we're all sinners. And I'm going to have to pump the brakes again and say, I don't feel it that way, see it that way. And instead, a massive pivot happened. And she told me I was born intersex with both male and female reproductive parts. And my jaw just hit the floor. I'm like, someone I know from my tiny Christian college? I met an I. So it was, and then you can't dispute the I. Like when the parents are born and the doctors say, yes, it's this. That's a clear case of it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. That's a clear case of our identities being so interwoven and so many facets of expression of that, including bodily and autonomy. And so I shared that with our Uber driver to be like, you can't dispute that, and I can. And it does. It pumps the brakes because it just, for all of us, makes us stop and be like, man, it is so not black and white. There is so much gray, and that's where we find so many different beautiful shades of our individuality. I don't know. Ultimately, I don't know how you felt, but I think by the time we got home with our sushi, we went from the beginning of the ride to be like, are we going to be walking for the rest of the ride home after the way this goes?
Well, and so to be fair and to be honest, we should not be having those kinds of conversations in Uber rides with strangers. If I were in the car, I would have told the Uber driver that we were filming a tampon commercial. Because when you're on a movie set and somebody comes up or whatever, and they don't know you're on a movie set, but this is what we do in the movies, right? Yeah. You know, people are like, what are you doing? They want to know, they want to see what stars on set. You just tell them you're shooting a tampon commercial. And then honestly, it's a safety thing. And you all know my thing is safety first. But I hear you, and I'm the same way sometimes too. It's like when you decide, do you go to and have the conversation or do you not have the conversation? And to be honest with you, I'm so glad that y'all are safe. But once I did first hear this story, my immediate dad brain went to, oh my gosh, my kids are in danger. I can't believe you did that, because it could have gone way worse.
Yeah. That's not a far-fetched notion at all. It's not extreme. That the trans community in particular are losing lives left and right due to this kind of abuse and murder.
And it's also because of, and so another reason why I do the work that I do is a lot of these issues that we see in our society are seeping out from our church buildings, and our church leaders and evangelical leaders who are pushing this kind of hatred and misinformation are causing these issues. It's not the churches, obviously, that we visited. There are churches out there doing wonderful things, but first it was people of color, then it was women, then it was gay people, now it's trans people. You can see the marker moving, and you can read it in their proposals as far as, once we give this group of people a certain amount of rights, we're going to have to give this group of people a certain amount of rights. And so Unfortunately, our film is a little political because we do have to show the history of how it happened. People who are hungry for power and access to power have hijacked the Bible, have hijacked the people's emotions, and have turned it into these fear-based things and taken verses. Well, you proof text when you just pull and cherry pick to target.
These political issues are our lives.
Yeah.
They're beyond political issues. And it's like, oh, I don't talk politics. Well, those quote politics are the issues every day that we live through coming and going to work, to being able to have work and secure work and stay in your job and in your housing and to your health care. All of these things that everybody else gets to have daily without the question of this. And so that's where it doesn't feel equal, and why we're fighting for equal rights, and why we're having these conversations, and literally fighting for trans lives to matter, and to literally say, please stop killing us, along with, BIPOC and Black community and so many of the people who are marginalized and not getting enough attention for the issues facing them. So it was, like you said, it was a short ride, but we went for it. And by the end of our ride, though, I think we both felt, okay, that was a whirlwind of a ride. But at the end, he walked away, I think, with a bit more of like, just a little light bulb, like, those two are interesting.
Did you hand him a card at least of the movie?
I don't think we
Did you have a flyer?
We didn't have
we didn't have
cards.
one.
Yeah.
But did you tell him the name of the movie?
Yeah, for sure.
But he said, all right, you guys, God bless you. And we just left the car being like, we just looked at each other like, whew, and like,
yeah. I hope the sushi was good.
It was.
The sushi was good. And in fact, so good because I accidentally got DoorDash with the same order. And when we arrived home, that same order was on our stoop.
You're kidding me.
And so I bought one.
Oh, no.
And the trip bought one. And we ate a lot of sushi.
Wow.
It was a happy accident.
It was.
Which
was like really funny. Like it was the comedic relief you'd expect in a film, like after something like
yes,
that.
we
So
needed
so, yeah, no, it was
That's
funny.
good.
It was
That's
so
good.
comical. But yeah, I think we genuinely like left this person maybe a little bit more open-minded, a little bit more compassionate, and more of like, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, in conversations like that, Carter, what do you hope? How do you hope people will approach with their curiosity or their conversation? What is it you would love to see?
I think just like asking, first of all, just being like, hey, like, are you open to talking about your identity? Or I know it's not your job to educate me, because it's not our job to educate. But I'm usually that person who's like open to, as long as they're willing to be receptive, because I also had to learn about myself, and I had to spend years doing that. And it's like we're all growing, and that's pretty much what I can usually say, aside from like, we don't owe anyone. And I say this is just because, again, like safety is a big deal, and I chose in that moment to be open. But someone is not entitled to that, and it is a privilege in and of itself. We want to disclose that.
Yeah. And, I think we've said this multiple times, that it's so grateful and thankful to have you in the RV, and the openness with which you shared with me. I learned next to you about some of the things I just didn't. And it's even within our own community that I don't have conversations like this a lot. And it moves me to want more and to have more.
Well, unfortunately, within our own community, there are still people who are pushing back on certain letters in the alphabet. And that comes also from a place of privilege. And it's heartbreaking to see. It's actually happening more in the UK, I've noticed, in my traveling overseas than here in the US. The T community has been pushed out to a point where there was a bar that was recently opened that was just for certain people. And I'm like, how can we be doing this to our own community?
Right.
And it's really sad. It's the same thing as when I learned with Dr. Parker in our film, the difference between feminism and womanist theology. And the difference is seeing the eyes through multiple women, not just white women. And I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. The feminist movement was started by white women and really only thought of white women. And it wasn't on purpose. This isn't something that the movement did to exclude. It wasn't a malice thing, but it is a really important part. And so it is about making sure that we're letting and listening and absorbing more voices, and we learn more from it. So yeah, it's heartbreaking, but I think more conversations like this will help hopefully those closed minds realize what they're doing. They're no different than what the church is doing to people.
You've got to listen, make space, and be aware of other stories. And I think it only helps build more love and build more space in communities, so that we're not running out of places like Texas, so that we don't have, back in 2014 with marriage equality, I think people started to be like, oh, okay, well, I can live in Cincinnati or St. Louis. We don't have to go to a different state or a different city to be married. And the same way, when we start to feel more freedoms and protections for us, we can be all over the United States and not think we only have San Francisco or LA as our options. We're not going anywhere. This is going to continue to be a thing. We're a thing. Like, we've got to learn how to live together and love together and act as a society together. What is something for you, Hunter, that like just clicked about your own identity and ability to find acceptance, and not just acceptance, but confidence to walk the way you do and to share who you are with people?
I would say like community is so important, because I am originally from New Mexico, and it is like a progressive state, but ultimately it was just like I needed resources and I needed community. Otherwise, I was just like, I don't see a future for myself, which was sad. And then when you do meet with communities who shows up for you, who supports you, who loves you, accepts you unconditionally, unapologetically, at some point you just wear it. So I was seeing like a lot of my reflection in other people for the first time. And then another thing is like HRT does save lives. And I will say, like, once I started actually feeling aligned with myself, it really just like knocked my confidence to another place where it's just like, no, like I am meant to be here. I deserve to breathe. I deserve to live. I deserve everything that everyone else deserves. I'm just as much a child of God as the next person. And as someone who did grow up in the faith community, so something that I always wanted to do was to use my voice, my platform, my gifts for a bigger purpose, which is like, you don't have to choose between being like gay or Christian or trans or spiritual or whatever it is. So I will like live my life to the fullest and allow myself to be used and moved in the ways that I need to be, in hopes that the 5-year-old me, who I constantly think about all the time, or even the youth and the generations to come, to be the person you needed when you were younger, and just like pave the way. So we're being told now, like, oh, like it's impossible, but it's just like, well, then why not be the first? So if like that's my legacy, that's something that I'd rather do, is to make it easier for someone who won't have to think about this, hopefully in like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, where it's no longer like a thought. We just coexist.
Well, this has been a fun episode.
It has.
No, it's been wonderful, really, honestly. Like I've learned so much, and it was really wonderful to have you on the trip. And we had such a diverse group of people and met such a diverse group of people on the road. And man, we have so many stories to tell. Yeah, so Houston also. So our team, I was with the camera team, and Liz, who really was our 1946 official intern as a senior in college. I was on a show last year on NPR in Houston with a show called I See You with a guy called Eddie Robinson. And the producer, Laura Walker, called back up and said, hey, we want to get you back on a show called Houston Matters. So this time I was on with Craig Cohen, and I took the camera team and Liz, our intern, to the studios. After the interview, which was great, which we'll put in the show notes here, the producers were so cool and took the camera team and Liz around to just see the studio and really spent some time with them, which I really appreciated, which is always fun to take time for the next generation. But yeah, so that was my Houston experience. And then my cousin, Mariana, who we stayed with, we actually got to stay at her place because fortunately, but unfortunately for her, it was the same day she was having major surgery. So that night she was in intensive care. So we were supposed to spend time together. That time ended up being me in the emergency room with her. Well, it was in the intensive care room after the surgery. And I got to spend 2 hours with her and be there and be a family member in the room. It was really nice. Not the time we wanted to spend together, but probably the time that was needed because she was able to have more company there when in that really, really hard moment. But she's okay. Everything is good. The surgery went well. And then actually that next morning when y'all packed up to go to Baton Rouge, I got on an airplane and I went to Little Rock. I am on my way to a film festival in Little Rock, Arkansas. So I got to get on a plane, be there all day, and then I'll meet y'all back in Baton Rouge tomorrow. Which we can talk about in the next episode. We did a film festival in Little Rock. And we can talk about the Real Queer Film Festival and all those connections. And y'all can talk about your trip to Baton Rouge and how we met up later.
Oh, also, In-N-Out is still better than Whataburger.
They both.
Whoa! Is that what you thought? Because we had Whataburger in Texas.
Wait a minute. For our listeners who are not watching, I mouthed the word S-U-C-K. We don't want to get flagged. Yes. But yeah, I would say In-N-Out is better than Whataburger.
What did you think? I mean, I grew up in New Mexico, so like the closest to me was usually Whataburger. And I will say, I think it depends on the craving. But I will say if I do go to In-N-Out, I definitely get animal style. Yep.
Consensus.
You let us know in the comments below.
In-N-Out or Whataburger?
The great divide of this whole conversation.
That's really what America is about, the burger.
That's what's dividing us. Whataburger and In-N-Out. Figure it out, America.
Everything else, is perfect here. Everything in America is great.
Bye!
See ya!
Bye.
Thank you to our sponsors, makingthingsright.org, for your generous donation in helping us produce this podcast. And to Uncut Studios in downtown Los Angeles. Step into a studio unlike any other. To learn more, follow them at Uncut Studios DTLA on Instagram.